What up? What up? Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 59 of Blake&Vish Sports. I'm Blake here, joined with Vish, and today's episode, we have a few main topics, but just want to throw out there that we are hoping to answer your questions today. It's been a while since we've kind of done this. Usually we just kind of, have certain topics that we want to talk about, and that covers the whole show, but today's going to be a little different in the fact that we want to answer questions, things that maybe we haven't thought of, or just other things that are not talked about by the national media that could be answered. But we did have a few topics before we did get to any questions, though. And the first one is kind of the big news that's just has a huge ripple effect on the whole NFL at this point and how the season's going to shape up. And that is the Broncos. They traded Von Miller to the Los Angeles Rams, and in exchange they got a second-round pick and a third-round pick in 2022, so this upcoming draft. And the Broncos are paying $9 million of his roughly $9.7 million salary cap. So he's playing. The Rams are paying pennies on the dollar for him of his salary. But Vish, I wanted to start with you. What do you think of this trade, and does this put the Rams as the best team in the league?
So I don't know if it puts them in the best team of the league. I think that it gives them a better shot to win the Super Bowl. I already think the Rams were amongst a few teams in that conversation. I mean, you want to go down the list, starting off with Tampa Bay, Buffalo, of course, Dallas, Green Bay, your team, Arizona, Rams. I would say those are the six teams that look really, really, really good 8 weeks into this NFL season. So what I think that Von Miller to the Rams does is I think it helps them better match up with all of these teams. I think that the Rams have had to blitz a lot this year, which is something that you don't prefer to do in the modern NFL, especially because of the teams I named. Green Bay's got an incredible offense, and Dallas has an incredible offense, and Tampa Bay has an unstoppable offense. And Mina Kimes actually brought this up, and it's really interesting, right? The best way to stop quarterbacks in the modern NFL, right, is rush four, drop eight, and play too high, and force these guys to check the ball down underneath. It gives you the best opportunities to maximize just covering these people because it gives you the best coverage versatility. Well, to rush four, you have to be able to create pressure with four guys, and the Rams have been able to do that the last 7 years with four guys, basically because Aaron Donald is one guy that needs three guys to block him. So
Mm-hmm.
whoever's around him is able to create pressure. Well, now they have a guy who's the best pass rusher even today at 33 that Aaron Donald's ever played with. He's better than a prime Fowler. He's better than Clay Matthews, Leonard Floyd, all of them. I think Von Miller is still really, really good, especially if you look at what he was doing at the beginning of this season. They're going to be able to rush for. I think I don't think this makes them like for sure the best team in the NFL. Like it's really difficult to say that, but I do think it moves the needle towards their favor where it gives them another opportunity in the playoffs or against one of these really, really good teams where now they have three Hall of Fame players on their defense to go with their offense, which has obviously been clicking from week one and is just going bananas every week.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I'm kind of with you there. So I just wanted to touch on the Broncos side of things first because I feel like a lot of people are really down on them, and I mean rightfully so because this trade is obviously more about the Rams than the Broncos, right? But I think from the Broncos aspect of this, they're not competing to win. They're not going to win a championship this year. It's that simple. Their quarterback situation is still been bad since Peyton Manning left. They just can't seem to get that right, and they got a second and third for a guy on the final year of his contract. Now, they did have to pay him a lot of money, but it'll help them, I guess, quote unquote, tank or just not be as good, maybe get a little better draft position. But they weren't going they might go to the playoffs, but they're not winning anything this year. Von Miller might leave. It's kind of sad that they don't have a proper send off, really, I guess is my thing. But getting a second and third for a guy who is going to either leave this offseason or you're going to have to pay a lot of money when he's clearly past his prime. I'm not saying he's bad or anything, but he's getting up there and coming off a major injury. So I feel like the Broncos, they got away fine with doing this, in all honesty. And then the Rams side of things, I think they had to do this trade. Now, we know how special Donald and Ramsey are, but even against the Packers last year, if one of these two guys is even dinged up a little, and Aaron Donald was in the playoffs, he was almost a non-factor against the Packers. And the Rams defense did not look like it was the top 5 defense that it was last year. And this year they've lost a couple pieces. We've mentioned that before, and just a little bit, I guess, less talent or less depth in general in the defense, but it still is sticking together because you have Donald and Ramsey. And we've mentioned it again a bunch of times. They might be the two best defensive players in the league, both of them. Number 1 and 2, either way you put it, they could be the two best. And that helps so much. But adding another third piece who you mentioned has been really, really productive. He's top 10 in pressures this year. So you can obviously tell that he's been uber productive. And now the fact of the matter is you not only have to double team Aaron Donald every play, but you're going to have to double team Von Miller a fair amount as well. Because unless you want one of your probably weaker tackle, because he could line up either side if he wanted to, from going up against Von Miller, good luck with that. Just good luck with that. And then not to mention just the success that even average pass rushers have had across from just being on the line with Donald. You mentioned Dante Fowler. He was okay with the Jags. He had potential. Comes to the Rams, 10th sack season, leaves, and we don't hear about him again. Clay Matthews left the Packers after not being good, gets a bunch of sacks and then gets injured, leaves, don't hear about him again. Leonard Floyd joins. He had a 10-sack season, I want to say, or a lot of good amount of sacks. He did eventually get paid, and he's with them, and that's another good piece for them. But the point is, it almost seems like you can put in any average pass rusher on the Rams, opposite of Donald. They're just on the same line, and they're just going to get a lot better stat because you have to put 2 or 3 on Donald every single play. Now imagine what you're going to do with an elite pass rusher like Von Miller and what those results will yield. Well, you not only have that, you have Leonard Floyd as your third guy now, which is, I think, solid right there too. So really, I think this defense needed this. Without this, I would really question this defense against a prime team, like a primetime team in a big game, like we saw the Packers last year and like we saw against the Cardinals this year, because that game really has gone under the radar. But the Cardinals, I mean, to put it lightly, they killed them. It wasn't really close. They scored over 30 with ease. So I think this was a necessary addition and something they had to do for their playoff push.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, and I think a lot of people look at first things first. A lot of people look at the compensation for Von Miller, what they gave up the second and the third, and they're all up in arms, like, "Oh my God, how can you give that up?" But to me, it's what you have to do when you're in a Super Bowl window, right? There's a reason the New England Patriots 2 years ago gave up a second-round pick for Mo Sanu. The Niners gave up a third and a fourth for Emmanuel Sanders. This is what you do, and I actually don't think the compensation is that steep. I don't think he's a rental. It looks like the Rams have a good shot at re-signing him. That's already been widely reported. And the other thing is a second and third round pick for a top 10 edge rusher in football. To me, it's a no brainer. You got to do it. And Von Miller is still really, really good. And you broke down all the reasons why he's going to make them better, especially when they play the teams they're playing. But also, if you look at their defense, right? One of the things that they've been missing, the Rams defense, it's technically sound, but they've been missing a lot of the big negative plays that they used to force to put teams in bad down and distance situations. They're situationally excellent. They're very good in the red zone. They're terrific on fourth down. They're mediocre on third down, but they're situationally a good defense. I think Von Miller is going to give them just a more of and just splash plays from their defense, where it's not just Donald Ramsey. You're going to get more tackles for a loss. You're going to get more sacks, forced fumbles, and these kinds of things. I think it's an incredible move. Again, are we going as far as best team in the NFC or in the NFL? I personally, I don't know if I can go there yet, but like you mentioned, they had to make this move, and I personally don't think the compensation was that steep.
Yeah, I mean, for the Rams, they don't really use their high-end draft picks. They kind of, ever since they took Goff, they haven't taken someone in the first round. So I think they've kind of just been off of that experience of taking a first rounder. But it's fine when you're getting people like Jalen Ramsey, or I mean, they didn't trade a first for Miller, but getting Brandon Cooks, getting guys like that are just, they're already really good. And yeah, you have to pay them, but they draft really well in the later and mid rounds where it makes sense for them. And that's something that not a lot of teams can do. But it works for them, and it kind of has for seems like the last 5 years. I remember after they signed Gurley and Cooks, everyone's like, "Oh no, this team is this is their win now opportunity." But that win now opportunity has been for 4 years, and I don't think it's really going to close anytime soon. At least that's how it looks, bearing drastic changes.
Yeah, and just one more thing I wanted to add on their philosophy. They seem to be very, very set in on the fact that it's too difficult to draft franchise level players, right? It's too difficult to draft a Jalen Ramsey or people like that in the first round, guys that, are transcendent talents. And they seem to think, okay, we can find role players who can start for us and, play a decent role, and we can develop within our system in this mid rounds. And that's what they've consistently done. They have 13 starters on their current roster, 13 out of 22 that were either drafted by them or signed by signed in as undrafted free agents. But you look at their stars outside of Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald. Robert Woods was a free agent pickup. Andrew Whitworth was a free agent pickup. Matthew Stafford they got through trade. Jalen Ramsey they got through trade. So they seem to be set in on this idea of if there's a star available, we got to trade for him because it's difficult to draft stars, but we can develop, and we're so good at coaching and we're so good at finding value in terms of our scouting and drafting that we can develop role players. And I think it's a really good philosophy. Maybe they go overboard in it, but I do think it should be the philosophy in the NFL because it's impossibly difficult to find star players like a Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, definitely. So, are they the best team in the NFC or NFL? That's to be seen, but this was a necessary upgrade that they just had to do. And then, I guess, on the topic of already really good teams, one of the best teams so far, off to a hot start, did just suffer another loss to the Packers on Thursday night, but Kyler Murray got injured, and it's a sprained ankle, happened towards the end of the game, out for one, 2, maybe 3 weeks at most. But what do you think the impact of this injury is, and do you think it really will, in the grand scheme of things, at the end of the season, hurt them a lot?
Excuse me. I don't think it's going to hurt them in terms of making the playoffs or anything like that. I think they're kind of set in where they are right now. Where it makes me nervous is last year we saw Kyler Murray get off to an MVP level start. Not the level that he's played this year, but a tick under. He was widely considered one of the 5, 6, 7 best quarterbacks in football, as he is right now. And we saw that Thursday night game versus Seattle, he tweaked his non-throwing shoulder, and he was not the same player the entire season. And the thing with the Cardinals is they're very talented on both sides of the ball, but they go and they win all these games because they have a very special quarterback in Kyler Murray. And what makes me nervous is that it's not that he's not going to come back. He's going to come back. He's going to play. There's no doubt about it. If you're looking at Arizona as a Super Bowl team, I don't know if this ankle injury is going to linger, in week 17 and in the first round of the playoffs and stuff, because they need 100% healthy Kyler Murray that's playing the way he played the first 5, 6 weeks of the season in order to beat a Green Bay, in order to beat a Rams, in order to beat a Dallas, in order to beat a Tampa Bay. So I think that's what I'm more nervous about, honestly. To me, I don't care even if he misses 2 weeks because I think Arizona's already shown how good they are and they're so ahead in terms of record, right? Like there's 5 teams in the NFC or 6 teams in the NFC that are so far ahead, and then the 7th seed, you got a bunch of 500 and below 500 teams competing for it. But I don't really care, what the repercussions are for them for the next 2 weeks. I think it does push them out of the conversation for getting the 1 seed. I think it gives the
Yeah.
Rams the opportunity to take the lead in the division. But what I'm more nervous about is their long-term prospects, because if this injury lingers, I think it basically knocks Arizona out of, that elite level contenders, because this is their best player by far. He's a really, really special quarterback. And when he's going, they can beat anybody. But if he's not as healthy, I don't think they do enough on offense, schematically and stuff to be able to compensate for Kyler Murray not making a million different amazing plays with his arm and his legs.
Definitely. I think that point needs to be emphasized, right? That he's one of the new age quarterbacks where not only is he really good at throwing, but his legs make him so dangerous. He's kind of like, the Lamars, the Russell Wilson in his playmaking, and there's a lot of other guys like that. You could even say Allen and Mahomes to an extent. They're not as good, but they are really good at that too. But what that means is when he is injured and his mobility is limited, it really limits who the Cardinals are as an offense. If this same injury happens to someone like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, they're already in the pocket. Now their mobility lessens a little bit, but they can still do most of all the stuff they did before, because what they do is mostly 90% in the pocket. Rodgers maybe a little more than that, but like Brees and Brady, they're in the pocket the whole time, so they can still do all the stuff. But Kyler, on the other hand, he's one of the main reasons he's as effective as he is because on a 3rd and short, he can take a read option and get a first. On a 3rd and long, he can scramble if it's man. And a lot of the stuff they do is just predicated on the fact that he's going to make a few plays every game that just can't be stopped because of how athletic and how good he is. When that gets taken away, I feel like that severely limits their offense's potential. Now, they still have really good weapons, right? They have Hopkins, they have Green, they have Moore and all that, but I still feel like their best weapon on their offense is probably Kyler Murray's legs. And without that, I feel like this offense is going to lose a dimension that with it makes them one of the best elite teams, but without it, I think their offense could start to struggle a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, right, that's the most important point. If their offense struggles, right, they already lost J.J. Watt. That's a massive injury. J.J. Watt was playing fantastic this season. J.J. Watt was playing like how J.J. Watt has played the last 10 years. Injuries have been really the only question for him the last like 3 or 4 in terms of the level he's playing at. And so it makes you a little bit nervous because, Arizona, they played so well the first 8 weeks of the season, but is attrition catching up to them? Because, I think Arizona has proven that they are a level in terms of talent and then their quarterback at the level of Dallas, Green Bay, Rams,
Like those 5
Tampa
elite
Bay.
NFC teams.
Right, but I think there is a giant question mark if, let's say, Kyler Murray's 80% and he finishes the season 80%. 80% of Kyler Murray is still a top 15 quarterback in the NFL, probably even top 10, and he's probably still going to look amazing. But I don't think they can beat those teams, those aforementioned teams, with 80% of Kyler Murray. They
Mm-hmm.
need 100% Kyler Murray because he is so special, but I mean, the durability thing with him, that was the big concern for a lot of people with his size, but he never took hits at Oklahoma, so it was tough to say. It's real. I mean, look at the last 2 years. It's not that he doesn't play or misses time. He plays through it. It's just that you have a drop off, and Arizona can't afford to have that drop off because I feel like they don't compensate enough around Kyler Murray. Everything is predicated on how special he is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's kind of like the other quarterbacks too. Like you can even look in 2014 with Rodgers' leg injury. He ran a lot. And in that, in those playoffs when he was kind of on one leg, it really hurt them because a lot of what made him so good was being out of the pocket and just throwing bombs deep or, running 15 yards on a crucial 3rd down. Well, when that's gone and you're missing that X factor element, it really, really limits sort of the big plays and just their effectiveness to kind of carry a game. And with Kyler, we kind of already saw that a little bit last year when, they were 6-3 and then they lose to the Seahawks. He gets an injured shoulder and they kind of bottom out and don't really finish the season very strong. So hopefully, it doesn't linger. That I'm not saying it's going to, but there is a realistic chance that it could, especially someone who runs as much as he does and puts as much pressure on his legs as he does. But we will see. But overall, I think Kyler, the impact of his injury could play really, really big effect in the playoffs. Getting there shouldn't be too much of an issue for them, especially with the last couple NFC wildcard spots seeming like 9 or 10 wins is going to get you there at this rate.
Less than that, maybe.
Maybe, hopefully not. But another main thing that we kind of wanted to do here, guys, was answer any questions. This could be rankings, just general Niners stuff, or any overall questions about teams you guys had. I'm sure it'll probably be either Jets, Lions, or Niners from the looks of things, but that's fine. Just throw them in there, and we will do the best to our abilities to answer them.
So Blake, I went to the game yesterday. We actually haven't talked since I told you I went. I went to the game, and while we wait for questions, dude, Justin Fields in person, He's some athlete, dude.
Is he some athlete, or is just the Niners defense just really bad, really bad?
You know, a lot of people think it's just the Niners defense,
Yeah.
but it stands out when a quarterback is faster than everybody on the field, and his accuracy really stands out. I've been a little nervous, you know. A lot of people always want to ask me because I liked him before the draft. Like, what do you think of Fields so far? What do you think of Fields so far? And his situation hasn't been great, but he's also not played, in the way that I would have expected. Like, there's a lot of things in his game that need polishing. A lot of his detractors were absolutely right on about some of those things, and I think we acknowledge those things too. Maybe we overlooked how much they would affect him in his career, so I was a little bit nervous, but
Mhm.
that game when they put him in that style of offense with a lot more bootlegs, a lot more play action, utilized his legs, made me feel good. He looks good.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, even the Patriots situation isn't the best considering their receivers, but they still have probably the best or second best situation out of the five rookie quarterbacks. Niners, you could almost argue the Niners aren't even the best at this point, with their only offensive weapon really being Debo. Their O line has been, I feel like, up and down. Trent Williams has
It's
been
been
solid.
okay.
The right side of the line, especially in pass blocking, has been more brutal than I think we anticipated it to be. Um,
Brunskill
generally,
can be a little bit rough at times, yeah.
yeah. But good thing McGlinchey's out there. He makes up for all that in the run blocking. But yeah, if there's any questions, let us know. If not, we can end it early, but we will keep going on. I guess one thing we can get to while the questions come in is just we can each name. I want to hear who you think, Fish, is one coach on the hot seat right now that you think is going to be gone maybe before the end of the season?
Hmm. So I think the obvious answer everybody points to for this question is Brian Flores. And you put me on the hot seat by asking me this question, right? And it's easy to just say Brian Flores. And I think it would be a fair answer, but I'm actually going to go with Urban Meyer. I think Urban Meyer is should be the coach on the hot seat. Look, I know that they're trying to build something in Jacksonville, and they don't have a lot of talent. They didn't inherit a roster with a lot of talent. Trevor Lawrence is pretty amazing. You have to look beyond the numbers and actually watch him play, especially the last 4 or 5 weeks. He's been really good. Where it looks like Jacksonville has a franchise quarterback for sure. But I just look at Urban Meyer. I go back to the situation he had. That was so weird with him not traveling with the team and then being caught on in 4K doing things that I mean, live your life, Urban. It's just a bad look for a leader of an organization. And then I thought his presser after it, uh a little bit he didn't I didn't feel like he took accountability that well for his actions. He was just saying it's stupid, blah blah blah. But I felt like he had no presence. I felt like he was embarrassed. But I didn't think he represented himself that well, in my opinion after that position. I just feel like, look, Jacksonville has got such a talented quarterback. There's so many assets available for Jacksonville. There's a great opportunity to build this team up. And the worst thing for them to do is allow Urban Meyer to be the one to build it up and then find out 4 years from now that he's not suited for the NFL and he's not that good of a coach and screw Trevor Lawrence that way. I think they're better off. Nobody wants to fire a coach after 1 year. It's not good practice in the NFL. But to me, you have to get this right, and you have to get this right in terms of building around Trevor Lawrence over these couple years, so you can maximize him in year 3 and year 4 on the rookie contract. I understand that, it's been better for Jacksonville. They won the game in London. The Seattle game was rough. A lot of people put that on Trevor Lawrence. I personally didn't think he was that rough in that game. I'd have to go Urban Meyer in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. He has to be either on the hottest seat or like the second hottest seat right now. I think one thing too is just the whole draft with, I don't know if he wanted ETN or someone else wanted ETN, but I'm assuming it's he wanted ETN.
So he
And
wanted Tony, and he publicly said he wanted
okay,
Tony. Tony was taken by the Giants, so then they settled for ETN to kind of play that similar role in their offense.
Yeah, so that whole situation to me is still I can't get over that. I simply cannot get over that. I know James Robinson is not a top 5 running back. I know his stats may be a little overinflated because he gets pretty much every snap at running back. But that was going into the draft, that was the one position besides the quarterback they drafted where they kind of had it relatively figured out. They had a cheap rookie running back who they got undrafted, and he played really well for them. And they took a running back in the first round when they have holes all over their roster. That I cannot forgive them for. And I get they wanted a playmaker on offense, but there were so many receivers available. There's so many good defensive players available that could help fill their roles. I feel like any other position I could have understood outside of kicker, punter, and maybe long snapper. Outside of those, running back was like the next position you don't draft. So that for me is still mind-boggling. And then back even on James Robinson, why is Carlos Hyde getting so many carries? The first couple of weeks, Carlos Hyde was out snapping or getting more carries than Robinson. That also confuses me. I know you mentioned earlier the whole situation not going back with the team. That's rough. I just don't know at what point do you say like we just need to cut ties with them. I feel like even before the end of the season wouldn't be the worst. I feel like grabbing one of these young, maybe go grab Kellen Moore. Joe Brady he's been looked down upon a little bit because they've struggled this year, but even him, like take a flyer on him. You got to do something else because it just doesn't seem like Urban Meyer is going to be the guy. And he just doesn't seem like a leader that you would want as a head coach in the NFL today.
Y you know, I don't even think they should go the young offensive coordinator route because
Mm,
Jacksonville has struggled for so many years. I think what they need is somebody to instill a culture and a winning, mantra and mentality and somebody that can lift an organization
mm,
the way like a Jim Harbaugh or John Harbaugh or Mike Tomlin, guys, who
Rivera.
Mike Tomlin is obviously excellent at the X's and O's, but it's also them as people. They're such powerful people. They can uplift everybody around him. Urban
Mm,
Meyer technically is supposed to be like that, right? That's what he did in every college stop that he was at, from Bowling Green to Ohio State. The issue is that I don't feel like he's doing that in Jacksonville.
no.
I feel like he's in over his head. I feel like recruiting was really what he did well in terms of creating culture. And I mean, of course, the culture he created was always on flimsy pick holdings everywhere he was, because it used to come way apart and crumble within 3 4 years, and
Yeah.
you would see a lot of terrible things happening with each and every one of the places he's been in. Everybody knows those details. I don't want to get into them now. The Ohio State situation was ugly. You go with Florida and look at all the character issues that was on the team
Mhm.
and the things they got away with Urban Meyer as the coach. I mean, it's not good, but that's really what stuns me. Like, what is he building? Like, what is sustainable about what Jacksonville does? This guy's out here talking about getting 200 rush yards, 200 pass yards, which I don't even think is feasible for Ohio State if they played, Indiana in the Big Ten tomorrow. So I don't know how you expect to
Yeah.
do that in the NFL on a week to week basis. I don't know what the culture is that he's building. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he has enough cachet to get the right coaching staff for Trevor Lawrence. Brian Schottenheimer, Darrell Bevel, they've not done terribly this year, but we've seen how that experiment went in Seattle with each of them with Russell
Mhm.
Wilson. It's
Not good.
not the most schematically advanced and creative and benefit your young quarterback type offense. I, I would go a different route. I actually like the suggestion of Kellen Moore. I think he's fantastic. Joe Brady, I've never as much bought the hype. I think we've talked about him a little bit. I said I
Mhm.
think he runs a good system, but I think his play calling lacks a bit of creativity. Though I think people coming down on him this year is a little bit extra because he is handicapped. But I'm joking. He's not handicapped by Sam Darnold, but a lot of people don't
It's
want to
hard,
put
yeah.
blame on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's not a very good quarterback. That's just what it is. He's not very good, and so um I guess you could go Joe Brady. Maybe I think Dayball is also a bit overrated. If he can bring Josh Allen with him to every one of those spots, I'm sure he'd be fantastic. But they got to get. I think they do got to go get someone else, and they got to make sure they get the right guy.
And maybe you're right, and maybe they do try to get in someone like Urban who does have experience, who's supposed to be more of like that motivational leader, like guys that come to mind. Jim Caldwell with the Lions, he seemed one of those guys who was just a good leader. Ron Rivera
And
is kind of that
he's a good
staple
play
guy.
caller too.
Yeah, Ron Rivera is that staple guy who's like strong personality and all that. Maybe there's someone like him that like those two guys or like the idea of Urban Meyer was supposed to be that they could bring in and try to, maybe not be the most, I don't know, have the best X's and O's coach, but they have someone who is a good leader and can kind of rally the troops when things get tough.
Agreed.
Definitely. So that's the hot seat. So you had Urban Meyer. We didn't talk about mine, but mine was real quickly. I would say Zimmer. I would say Mike Zimmer of the Vikings. I think he's got to be on the hot seat at this point. They've kind of been underperforming, and I don't know. Something has to change for the Vikings because they're too talented to have the current record that they do. But we can get into. I think we have time for one quick question, and I think this was the first one, so we can go with it. But Pinor, always asking great questions, asks, the Bengals have taken a step up this year, but is the success of the Bengals more because of the Browns dealing with injuries, Ravens relying on Lamar, and Steelers underperforming? Vish, what do you think?
I do think it's a mixture of all of those things, but I also think Cincinnati's good. I think we underrated their defense coming into this season
Yeah.
because we just didn't we haven't seen a lot of production for more than 1 year from a lot of their players on their defense, right? We knew Von Bell has been a really solid player for a long time. Jesse Bates was not, I wouldn't say struggled, but he wasn't the safety he was last year in his first 2 years in the NFL. I think that's very much fair to say. He was terrific last year, and it's continued. And him and Von Bell are one of the best safety duos in football. Logan Wilson has really stepped up for them in linebacker. That was not a guy I personally was that aware of before the season. Trey Hendrickson had that one fantastic season in New Orleans and was paid, to be a number one pass rusher. And I knew he was a good player. I wasn't sure if he could be that guy. And he's been a standout signing for Cincinnati. He's been better. I thought they messed up by giving him money and letting Carl Lawson walk, but no, Carl Lawson tore his Achilles, and here's Trey Hendrickson kicking butt for them. And then I was nervous about Burrow coming back from the ACL. He looks great. Jamar Chase we've talked about him a couple of times here already. He's unbelievable. He is so good. And so I do think the
Exceeded
Cincinnati Bengals
expectations.
are good. I do think they also, right, are benefiting from the division. Pittsburgh is not a good football team. Pittsburgh, the only reason I think they're above 500 right now is because Mike Tomlin's their head coach. I don't know how they win games. I don't know how they do it because their offense is horrible. Big Ben, it's time to retire. This looks like Eli at the end of his career. Um, their defense is really good. Najee Harris is good, and Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool are special. But it's ugly every week with Pittsburgh. But because Mike Tomlin's their head coach, they don't beat themselves. They're excellent situationally and stuff like that. They're somehow having a winning record. Baltimore, I think you and I were on the Baltimore is overrated train as a football team. Lamar Jackson is one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. He's proven that this season, and that's why Baltimore has the record they have. Top to bottom, their roster lacks talent in the offensive line, especially Ronnie Stanley with him battling injuries this season again. It's been difficult for them. Their defensive line and front seven to me is a question mark. And their secondary, Deshaun Elliott and Marlon Humphrey are the 2 standout players in that secondary. Everybody else to me is inconsistent. I have a question mark about even Chuck Clark, who's fine. So look, I do think, and of course, the Browns are mega talented. They've been dealing with injuries from Baker Mayfield to every single person on that roster. It seems, besides Myles Garrett, is dealing with something. But I think more or less, I don't think that takes away from how good Cincinnati is. That's what I'm saying. I think every one of those reasons are correct. They're true. But I also think Cincinnati is proving that they're way more talented than we gave them credit for. They're a really good football team. Burrow's a special quarterback.
Yeah, I think some of these factors. All right, going into the year, people kind of knew the Steelers were on the downslide. I think that was something most people agreed with. Ravens, they're kind of where we thought they were. They're better than a 500 team, but they're not in that, elite top 3 category in the AFC or in the NFL. And then the Browns are probably the biggest surprise to us. We had them ranked really high. I think we both put them in that top 3 AFC team just because of how loaded their roster was, but they've been dealing with tons of injuries to their quarterback, running backs, line, defense, you name it. They're injured there. So that's tough. But I also think more than anything is the Bengals have just been better than we all thought. You mentioned their defense. Chidobe Awuzie has been an insane corner. He has been unreal. I don't know where this was when he was on the Cowboys, but he has been legitimately locked down. And their defense has been really solid. And then Burrow coming back, he's been better than last year. Jamar Chase is better. We thought he would be good, but we didn't think he would be generational. We didn't think he would be almost leading the league in receiving yards. We didn't think that. And Joe Mixon stayed healthy. Their line has been better than we previously thought it would be, although there's still I still have question marks there regardless. But yeah, I think it's
getting
more
better.
this is more about the Bengals being better than we thought, than these other teams maybe not being as good as we thought, mainly the Browns. I think the Ravens and the Steelers, we kind of knew where they were, but the Browns are a surprise. But still, I mean, in my rankings, I had the Bengals finishing, third or fourth in this division, and they're going to probably finish first or second. So I think it's more about the Bengals being a team that we didn't think highly enough of, as opposed to a team that's, maybe like the Titans that I feel like are benefiting from having, the Jags and the Texans in their division, as opposed to, they're beating up on the bad teams. Where the Bengals have played really good teams closely and have beaten good teams.
Yeah, look, the Jets game was disgusting this weekend, right? But the
Yeah.
Bengals played Green Bay down to the wire. They played Green Bay as good as anybody's played Green Bay this year.
Yep.
They're very talented. I think that's really the big takeaway, right? All those factors, I'm with you. They're true. They're part of it. But Cincinnati's also good.
Yep. And then, we need the slander for Zach Taylor has I'm maybe not officially ended, but the stuff saying Zach Taylor needs to be fired, I think that is out the window now. He's been really good. I think there's been a couple of sides to this. There's been the side saying he hasn't done anything in the past few years, and then the side saying, how can he do this when he's been starting look who at quarterback? And I think it's the who he's been starting at quarterback side that's kind of coming out on top, because they've been fantastic this year. Hopefully it continues for the rest of the year.
So I disagree. I don't think. Look, Zach Taylor is a good coach, but I think Zach Taylor and Cliff Kingsbury kind of fall in the if you really get a special quarterback, even if you're an okay coordinator and do like normal things on offense that a lot of different coaches can do, you can look really good and win a lot of games because that quarterback's just the great equalizer. I'm not saying he's bad or deserves to get fired or anything, but I do feel like, even though it's not like his offense is really breaking schematically or anything, I think it's solid, and a solid offense gets it done when you have Joe Burrow, who's unbelievably so good in the pocket, and he's so smart, and he knows where to go with the football, and he's so accurate. And then you have Jamar Chase, who no matter who you line him up against outside, he's beating them down the field and creating big plays, even if you're running, go balls against bad looks and, poor, and he's just so good that he'll win for you on the outside.
Yeah, definitely. But that is the Bengals. So unfortunately I got to run. So that is going to kind of wrap up this stream, but thank you guys for all coming. Hopefully we can, come out again, drop a like. Thanks for coming, Taylor, much appreciated. Come back in the future, and hopefully sometime later in the week we'll do another stream again. The days have been a little inconsistent, but we're hoping to get it better. And
yeah,
fix that.
And it's going to be a little more inconsistent this week, but after this week, I think our schedules will slow down a little bit. We'll stream a bit more, and we'll do a real Q&A because there were a lot of great questions we didn't get to, and we'll get to them. But Thank you, as Blake said. Please drop a like. All of you who are here, appreciate the like. Please subscribe, share, and we'll be back next time.